All right. Well, welcome to this April 8th, 2022 first meeting of the new Manufacturing Industry Sector Council. For the record, I'm Amy Fleming, Program Development and Engagement Specialist for the Governor's Office of Workforce Innovation. This first meeting will provide fundamental information to set expectations for future meetings and help us get accustomed to the format and requirements under open meeting law. Although there are no items that require action on this agenda, I'm going to go ahead and take roll of voting members in order to confirm a quorum. So please let me know you are present when your name is called. Daniel Flick, I don't think he's here yet, but I know he will be here. All right, Garrett Papinga. I see you there. Paul Siebel.
Present.
Tom Simpkins.
Hi, Amy. Present.
Hi, Tom. Hunter Stern. Saw you come in.
Yes.
There you are.
Yanni.
Hello, good afternoon. Yanni Tasev. Don't see him yet. And Jeff Wayne. Also don't see on here yet. All right. 1, 2, 3. Great. All right. So I hereby confirm that this April 8th, 2022 Manufacturing Industry Sector Council has reached a quorum. I further affirm that the agenda and notice for this meeting was properly posted pursuant to Nevada's open meeting law, NRS 241.020. Now, continuing to agenda item number 3, I'm delighted to recognize Isla Young, Executive Director of the Governor's Office of Workforce Innovation, to make a few remarks.
Thank you, Amy, and huge amount of thank yous to Amy for pulling this together and working so hard behind the scenes to make this happen. So I'm Isla. Many of you are familiar faces on this call, but also quite a few new faces. So thank you so much, first of all, for your willingness to serve and be a part of our Manufacturing Industry Sector Council. It is such a crucial time in our state. And as we all know, manufacturing is absolutely exploding. So we're very excited to have access to all of your brains, to all of your insights, the intelligence that you can bring to these conversations as we're looking at having the best education to workforce ecosystem in Nevada. So you all are very important to us. I'm incredibly grateful for you spending today on a Friday at 3 o'clock. So thank you. And we look forward to the good work that we'll be doing together in the future. So thank you again.
Absolutely. Thank you, Isla. There's another key GOIN team member that you all should be familiar with. So I will now recognize Andreas Fijo, liaison to the Governor's Office of Governor's Workforce Development Board, to introduce himself.
Thank you, Amy. Hi, everyone. My name is Andres. I'm the board liaison to the State Workforce Board. I'm excited to be here today and observe this meeting. The industry sector councils are an important branch of the state board, and I'm happy to see that they're back up and running again. And we hope that the discussions and insights that come from these industry sector council meetings can be helpful to guide workforce development efforts and policy in the state. So it's great that these are back up and running, and I look forward to observing. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Andreas. So now to agenda item number 4. Seeing as the councils have been inactive for some time, the GOIN team has taken an opportunity to look at these entities with fresh eyes. We've spent the past year looking through the legal requirements, researching best practices from other states, meeting with stakeholders, revising drafts, and revising them again, and so on. And I'm going to share my screen now to walk through the plan as it's being implemented. All right, you should see that. So please go ahead and hold questions until the end, or you can use the chat and put them in there and I'll check along the way. So first, we'll start by level setting with some Zoom and meeting etiquette. Please do mute yourself when you aren't speaking, but we can also go ahead and take care of that for you if your background noise is creating a distraction. Please raise your hand and wait to be acknowledged before contributing. Take a minute to rename yourself if you haven't done so already. It's helpful to include your name, your organization or company, and whether you are an employer or a partner. If you're not sure how to identify, we'll get to that on the next slide. I'm going to put mine in here. No, there we go. All right, so you may feel free again to use the chat box to ask questions, introduce yourself, share contact information, but please do not deliberate on agenda items in the chat. It's important to be cognizant of this to be sure we're in compliance with open meeting law. On the right side of the screen here, you'll see I've included a few functional meeting best practices, which is something I took from a City of Reno workshop facilitated by the Center for Story-Based Strategy. Top of the list here, remember it's important to be curious and creative. We're all here to learn and discover from each other. Second, remember there's just one microphone. Try not to speak over others and remember to be called on. Next is an acronym I really like, which stands, it's WAIT, which stands for why am I talking or why am I not talking? It's really just an internal reflection to support meaningful engagement. Next, by being here, you consent to active facilitation. You may raise your hand or you may be called on even if your hand is not raised. And finally, throw glitter and not shade. Be encouraging of your fellow attendees, which will help us create an environment of trust and respect leading to collective problem solving. All right, so you'll be given an opportunity to contribute to these meetings and will need to self-identify as either an employer or a system partner. An employer hires individuals in the relevant industry and a partner supports the industry or system, but you may be both depending on the topic. For example, a representative from higher education may be looking to hire individuals in the field, but is also developing and running programs to support the system. This slide includes a lot of text and reference to the governing statute for these councils. All to say these are legally mandated entities that must check a few boxes to be compliant. And beyond that, the vision for the councils is to serve as formal advisory committees representing a mix of employers, labor, education, and others that provide feedback and guidance to state agencies and systems to strengthen alignment of current and future state resources. Meetings are designed to harness the employer experience, insights, and intelligence in order to strengthen the broader ecosystem. We are committed to leveraging your time to maximize engagement and be as inclusive and transparent as possible. It's important that we articulate the alignment with the state's economic development activity. The example shown here is from Nevada's Plan for Recovery and Resilience, which was published in 2020. We've been working very closely with the team at the Governor's Office of Economic Development throughout the Sector Council relaunch. Key takeaways here are that we intend to build on identified workforce and education strengths and address the identified opportunities for improvement. Again, it's important to acknowledge that the workforce development system and alignment activities are very broad. There are several regional networks meeting to discuss similar priorities, and there's an opportunity to go a step beyond that to address some nuances that happen at the sub-industry levels. We will absolutely make sure that this council is aware of opportunities to engage with regional entities, and we'll share takeaways so that we can learn from each other's conversations. So you've heard reference to voting members with our roll call, and we've also heard reference to engaging in open discussion. So this slide visualizes some of the similarities and differences between these groups. As you can see, most of the conversation between the groups is not delineated, but what is delineated is this distinction between employers and partners. Is there a separate opportunities for these groups to engage. Voting members will be asked to vote on items that have been agendized for action. So you may have also noticed some of the formality around how these groups have been assembled, what's included on the agenda, and how we're speaking to one another, who's permitted to speak and when. And this is because these meetings are governed by Nevada open meeting law. So I've tried to boil down the key takeaways to what you see here, but ultimately, if you're wondering about procedure, it's likely to come down to open meeting law requirements. One key takeaway is that items can only be voted on if there's a quorum. For this group, that means that 4 of the 7 voting members are present. And we are also required to post the agenda publicly well in advance of the meeting, and the agenda must include accessibility instructions, as well as items that require action. We cannot take action on any item unless it is published in the agenda in advance. We are also required to allow time for public comment, and we'll do so at the end of these meetings. Finally, the minutes will be taken and posted after they're approved at the following meeting. All right. Agendas for these meetings will follow a similar structure each quarter to help set expectations and provide consistency and order. Each meeting will begin with typically begin with employer introductions with some of the detail you see referenced here. Next will be a segment on workforce and economic data with an opportunity for employers to provide their reflections. After that, there will be a partner presentation relevant to some of the top issues shared in previous meetings. Again, this will be followed by an opportunity for employer feedback. And finally, we'll open the floor to our partners in the room to introduce themselves and give a brief overview of their work, share a program or opportunity most relevant to an issue raised previously in this meeting. It is worth drawing your attention to the right side of the slide, which indicates the expected duration of each of these items. There's unfortunately not time to be fully comprehensive, but the hope is that a robust landscape for this sector will start to come into focus over time. Finally, what's it all for? A summary report will be generated following each quarterly meeting. This will inform many of the entities you see listed here and well beyond. We also anticipate that partners will engage with employers to support grant applications and program development between meetings. So I'll pause now to check the chat for questions, which I didn't see any come in. And also open it up to additional questions. Stop this so I can see you. Thank you, Alexis, telling me someone's at the front door. All right, I don't see any questions. So we can move on to agenda item number 5, employer introductions. So you can go ahead, if you identify at this point as an employer, you can raise your hand. You can use the raise hand feature in Zoom that helps you queue up. And then I'll also call on folks that have employer in their Zoom name or that I know might be employers. I'm going to put a few notes in the chat here for your reference. All right. So as part of your introduction, please share your name, your company, your role in that company, and then your top hard to fill, urgent to fill, or in-demand position or positions. This is also an opportunity to share any acute barriers to attracting or retaining talent that you've been working through over the past few months. So I will expand this so I can see you. If I don't get volunteers, I'm going to start calling on you. All right, go ahead, Paul.
Hello, I'm Paul Siebel. I'm the training manager for Tesla. I think we have limitations on getting talent in every area in the factory. One of our keys that we're working on are maintenance techs, which we've developed some internal programs to help train people in the region to skill them out to be maintenance techs, but also engineers as well. I think those are two main areas we're focused on, and we're continuing to build those out both internally and externally with partners in the region. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you for being here. Go ahead, Garrett. Oh, you got to unmute yourself. Let's see. There you go.
Okay, so my name is Garrett Popinga. I'm the president of Weinberg Machining. I have this business already for 45 years. We do work for all sorts of industries and the machining theater. So our biggest problem is attracting skilled individuals, and I'm sure that's true for all of you that are in this sector. We train our own people for the most part. We like to find people that are trainable, and that's even hard to find as well. I'm working hard with the local schools to have workshops or just showing my presence and showing what we are doing in our industry. We show videos. I talk about opportunities. We do work shadowing. Any type of things we can think of to bring people to our facility and showcase. We have high schools coming to our facility on a field trip. We reach out to the local library they're very helpful in also engaging in this as far as showcasing career possibilities to people that go to a library. I work with different organizations from, with Tom at NVIE, NNDA, and so on. So I use any avenue to attract people. It is very tough, especially in today's environment where so many people are in need of skilled people. And a lot of people know that we train our individuals quite well. And somebody has a greater need, so they hire them away from me if they can, with quite a bit of more money. So it is tough out there.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you being here and taking the opportunity to just share your experience with yet another forum, but hopefully this will begin to address some of these issues. Thank you. So I will keep the floor open for additional employers that may be present. And I know we also have a number of individuals that represent employer groups, industry groups, such as chambers, and others, and you are welcome to go ahead and introduce yourself and share some of this key information that's outlined in the chat here on behalf of your employer stakeholders.
I'll jump in. I'm Elisa Cafaretta. I'm the director of DETR, the Department of Employment, Training, and Rehabilitation. And we too are having trouble hiring. The state has many vacancies, so we're all looking for folks. I think the barriers are, one, we have a new hiring system, and I think just that is making it hard to get through. And then I would say awareness of the benefits of working for the state is certainly probably one of our biggest challenges.
Absolutely. Thank you, Elisa. Tom, are you able to share on behalf of some of the employers you work with, in particular, those hard to fill, as specific as possible, the hard to fill, urgent to fill, or in demand roles? I know that's something our partners are eager to hear from.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm Tom Simpkins. I'm the director of Nevada Industry Excellence, and we are a federally grant-funded industry outreach organization, nonprofit. Our whole goal is to grow manufacturing in Nevada. There's one of us at every state, so collectively we grow manufacturing in the country. You know, when it comes to Nevada manufacturers and their struggles right now, a lot of it has to do with that kind of entry-level work. And what we're seeing is that manufacturers are struggling to find people to come to the interview, and then they're finding people to show up for the first day, and then they're having a hard time getting people sticking in the job. You know, the retention rate has been very challenging, and so I think what we're finding is that you know there's a certain portion of the workforce that that maybe hasn't had access to some skills that will help them thrive in an environment. You know, a manufacturing environment is very different than warehouse, logistics, distribution. And so jumping from one to the next can be a challenge without some type of onboarding. You know, Garrett mentioned the on-the-job training that they do. And so really robust plans that will help these manufacturers really keep this talent and really let them leave the nest with wings full of air to thrive, right? And so that's the real challenge right now that manufacturers are seeing is, you know, once employees get in there and start to understand the culture and start to see those machines making products and all the assembly and the final, you know, they really catch the bug of it, but it's that retention side. And so, you know, one of the things that I think we can really address here as a group is, you know, how do we help there? How do we help maybe you know, those sectors of our society that haven't had access to these things, whether there's barriers, that there's runways that haven't been there, and just some basic onboarding on what it means to work in a factory plant. You know, what safety is, what quality looks like, and, you know, lean 101, basic overview of what it's like to be here. And I think we're just not doing you know, the best service that we can to those underserved communities who, when we just expect them to just jump on a factory floor and thrive without some sort of support from whether it's the state, whether it's our higher education, whether it's our K through 12, and some exposure to manufacturing and to kind of know what it is. And so that's what we're seeing, you know, with a lot of manufacturers. You know, the higher level quality manager jobs, you know, those we've been able to fill. You know, maintenance tech, if you know any maintenance tech, they can pick their job in this state right now. But for the most part, you know, the management jobs we've been able to fill, it's just the entry level jobs, which is a golden opportunity for upskilling and helping those you know, displaced workers to have a new career path. And we know the cost of living has gone up a lot in the state. Manufacturing can really help there. These wages are great benefits, great culture. And it's that kind of middle class wage that will really help us. We just need to connect to the workers a little bit.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing. It's very helpful. Are there others that work with employers? I don't know, Hunter, if you feel able to speak to some of the employer demand that for the folks you work with, or if there are others.
Well, since you asked, yeah, happy to explain. So I'm with IBW 1245. We're the largest IBW local in the country. We represent manufacturers, although only a couple of locations in Nevada, but we work with our partner is actually a good term for us. We work with our employers in the industry. We have many more people that work for NV Energy and some of the co-ops, as well as water districts in northern and central Nevada. But we work with our employers to both, actually a lot of what Tom mentioned, instilling safety, instilling training. And I would say that besides the barriers that have been mentioned, you know, we work with through training programs, some are apprenticeship programs, you know, registered with the state. Others are training programs just that we negotiate and help the employer set up. But both of them require a little bit more math skills than some people are ready to display when the opportunity arises. So we've also been reaching out recently to some of the nonprofits to find the right combination of sort of pre-employment skills and make sure that people, when they are willing and interested, or we can attract their attention into these jobs, because Tom and others are correct. The pay and the wages and benefits are good. They're good jobs, that they're ready to take them. So I think that's where I'll leave it.
Great perspective. Thank you.
Hi, hi, Amy. My name's Kelly George, and I work with Opportunity Alliance Nevada. We work all over the state, and our mission is for economic and financial stability for all Nevadans. And one of the things that we know is that when people are more financially stable, they're less likely to switch jobs and move around. And one of the things that we've been seeing, we helped thousands of people during the COVID crisis. One, helped navigate the unemployment process. That quickly transitioned in helping them find rental and utility assistance. And of course, now that is transitioning into, are you looking for work? How are you looking for work? And I work closely with Bridging the Gap. They work both in Reno and Las Vegas for recruiting. And what they're finding is that up in Northern Nevada, we have some very high paying jobs, anywhere from $18 to $20 an hour, yet we can't find the people to even show up for the interview. Yet down here in Clark County, I work with a lot of people who are skilled labor who want to go out for the jobs. And the positions for openings that I'm finding are actually more like between $11 and $14 an hour. And with the price of rents, they can't afford to work in those jobs. In fact, they're not even willing to accept them. They're holding out for something better because their rents are high. One of the things we do with all of our clients is we do a saving and spending plan, going through their income, their rents, seeing where we can assist them financially plan so that they're more financially stable, so they know where they can afford rent based on their wages. And we also talk about personal development plans. Coming into an entry-level position, how do you want to grow within the company so that that can help retain employees within the company? What I'm finding personally down in the Clark County area and working with some of the employers and asking about, do you have positions? The response that I get back is, yes, we do. Just send people to our website, or the positions on Indeed, just send them to Indeed. And I don't know who's ever had to navigate that system. But when we're looking and talking about people in entry-level positions, that is not an easy feat just within itself. A lot of the skilled people that we talk with aren't getting called for interviews through that avenue. And I just feel like I'm seeing this big gap between all of the efforts that workforce development is working so hard to help provide skilled labor, and the manufacturers response that I often get is, we'll just send them to our website and then we'll hire them that way. And in Clark County, I don't see that working well, either for the employer or for the employee. And I know that I'm also often hearing that manufacturers need people with more experience beyond somebody, and this is what I hear, beyond somebody who's just coming out of a workforce development program. You know, so how do we fill that gap and that void of people switching careers who are new, people who cannot afford to accept an $11 to $14 an hour position because they simply can't put a roof over their head for that? And then how do we find those people up in Northern Nevada that were there before working in those positions? How do we actually get them in the position? And is the way that we're recruiting the correct way? So again, our goal is economic and financial stability for all Nevadans. And we would love to work with any manufacturers talking about how we can support your efforts around recruiting low to income moderate people, working with low to income moderate people, and doing financial education with low to moderate employees.
Thank you. Thanks so much for sharing,
Amy.
Kelly. I think if Kelly, if you can put your contact information in the chat, I can even if your screen's not on, I know some wheels are turning for ideas and connections from many of our partners and employers here. So please put your information, feel free to reach out to each other in the chat. I think that there's some good opportunities to connect here. I'll give it one more couple of seconds for any additional employer representatives. We're talking about the demand side here and to speak to those hard to fill open positions. All right. Oh, did you want to?
It's Isla. Are we allowed to ask a question back, or is that not allowed?
I think so. I'm not sure. Go ahead. Yes, Isla, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. I didn't want to break the open meeting law. Kelly, I just had a question about Kelly's comment regarding the interesting difference in pay. Are you speaking to the same job in the North and the South, that there's that much of a difference in pay, or are these different jobs in the different regions?
I believe it has to do with different regions, because they are all within manufacturing as well as logistics and distribution.
Interesting.
And I know that Tom also works with employers, or NBIE works with employers statewide. Is that a sense that you're seeing? Is there a discrepancy in wage?
You know, we don't have any wage study data, but I will say the difference in pay between warehouse, logistics, and distribution and manufacturing is stark. And so I think that's part of it too. You know, perhaps there's more of those warehouse logistics opportunities in Clark County right now as due to the growth in that sector that's happening. And maybe some of those are coming across as manufacturing jobs. But, you know, I think in the state, we view manufacturing jobs as, and I'm not trying to diminish distribution logistics in any way, but manufacturing jobs are a step up there as far as pay and experience and really career opportunities. And so, into my comment earlier, a lot of the challenge is even transferring those employees. I mean, if you've worked on a distribution center floor, it doesn't mean you're prepared for a manufacturing floor. They're very different environments, you know. And so, but that, you know, it would be interesting to look at some wage studies. I'm sure maybe at the state level somewhere we've got some of that to look and see apples to apples, how different it is and why is it different, and what we can do about it.
Wonderful. Yes, Bill.
Yeah, hi, Bill Regenhart, Las Vegas Global Economic Alliance, for the record. There is labor market study info, wage study info. You know, the information can be broken down by zip code or by MSA, and so I do that on a regular basis for businesses that are coming into the state, and you know, to kind of piggyback on Tom's comment, basically if they're coming in from a manufacturing standpoint and you know, saying that they're going to pay $12, $13, $14 an hour, we have a realistic conversation with them. So you know, from a manufacturing standpoint, it's really what I'm focused on is the talent pool and training and getting them upskilled. So, you know, the resources that we have from a Southern Nevada workforce standpoint are pretty vast. So, you know, if anybody needs to have that conversation, just shoot me an email. I'll be glad to shoot you some resources and you know, we can get everybody on the same page, because there's plenty of resources out there. But, you know, you kind of have to dig a little bit and do a little work on it, but that's why we're here. So from a manufacturer standpoint, we really want to get you lined up with apprenticeship programs, on-the-job training programs, work experience programs, you know, really focused on those individuals who are traditionally underserved. So, you know, like I said, the resources are there. We're here to help. It doesn't cost the manufacturers anything for us to do that, and you know, just let us know so we can help and get the manufacturers on the same page.
Thank you, Bill. Please put your contact information in the chat, especially when you're offering to be a resource. And we will go through partner introductions later in the agenda. There's time for all the partners present to provide those resources. So I think now we are ready, since somebody also mentioned, Bill mentioned data. It's a good opportunity to move into the data portion of our agenda, which does include presentations from 2 key state agency partners. And then after these presentations, we'll open the floor back up for employer feedback and reactions. So during these presentations, you're encouraged to take note of key indicators that either resonate or differ from your experience. So first, agenda item number 6, I'll recognize David Schmidt, Chief Economist with the Research and Analysis Division of the Nevada Department of Training, Employment, and Rehabilitation. It's all yours.
I have to remember to hit my mute button. Good afternoon. Happy Friday, everyone. As Amy said, my name is David Schmidt, and I'm the Chief Economist for the Research and Analysis Bureau in Dieter. And I will try to go over a lot of information really fast in the interest of everybody's time. But certainly if you want to talk about workforce and economic impacts and what's going on in the state, I could go on about that topic for a long time. So where we are in Nevada right now, as of February of 2022, we have seen a really rapid employment growth over the past year. Nevada's been number 1 in the nation in employment growth over the year for the last 4 months straight, and number 1 or number 2 for the last 11 months. You can see from the pace of increase in this blue chart here, with blue being the 2020 recession, that since we had the initial phase of the pandemic, both in the initial bounce back from the worst lows in June and July of 2020, we've continued a pretty rapid pace of growth. At this point, about 2 years into the recession, in the Great Recession, we were still going down. The Great Recession took years to unfold and years to recover from, and we've been on a much more rapid pace this year. Currently, looking at the industries where we've gained or lost jobs, we're about 15,000 jobs down statewide compared to our February 2020 employment level. So we're getting pretty close, probably a few good months away from actually hitting that pre-pandemic employment level. And the private sector is within 10,000 jobs. And thinking of manufacturing, the numbers on the left side of this chart show the net change from jobs lost February 2020 to May of 20, and then May of 2020 to the present, what jobs we've gained. And you can see that in manufacturing, we are 4,000 jobs to the positive. We've more than added back everything that was lost in that initial wave of the pandemic. And logistics was mentioned not long ago. The trade, transportation, and utility sector is the one that's seen the most growth. It's up over 22,000 jobs compared to where it was in February of 2020. Why we're still down is largely due to first the casino hotel industry. That industry is only about 80% recovered right now. And the second largest industry in terms of overall job loss is state and local government. And that's why the non-farm number is noticeably worse than the private sector number. Taking a look at the share of various industries as we've come out of the pandemic, I think this is kind of a helpful chart. The size of the boxes show the total number of jobs and that share over time. And then the color of the boxes from red to green shows as industries are recovering beyond 100%. And you can see that manufacturing at 105% recovered has seen the second strongest recovery as a share of total jobs in the state, second only to the trade or the transportation, warehousing, and utilities industry, with accommodation there at just about 80% recovered. Looking at manufacturing specifically, manufacturing is kind of an interesting industry in Nevada, in part because presently, the Reno-Sparks area actually employs more people in the manufacturing industry than the Las Vegas area. And you can see when this happened pretty clearly from the chart here in the second half of the last decade. Both in Reno and Las Vegas, there was a hit around the time of the recession. Both Reno and Las Vegas have recovered more manufacturing jobs, which makes sense because the state as a whole has recovered, but both areas have recovered more jobs than they had at the start of the pandemic. Las Vegas is still a bit short of its all-time high, which was reached prior to the Great Recession due to the manufacturing impacts of the housing boom and the manufacturing of housing construction related materials. In comparison, if we broaden our perspective to all goods producing employment, which includes construction as well as mining and extraction industries, you can see that Reno Sparks is again basically at all-time high levels, including the effects of construction because the construction industry is so much larger in Las Vegas, and the combined impact of both manufacturing and construction in the Great Recession. While we're around pre-recession employment levels in goods producing industries here, it's still pretty far short of the total employment we saw in that broader sector prior to the Great Recession. These two lines show the trend line. These are set to be 100% as of January of 2014 to show what the overall growth in jobs has been. So the blue line on the bottom here shows the total for everything that's not manufacturing, and the red line shows the pace for the manufacturing industry. And it's kind of interesting because you have sort of three eras. Before the Great Recession, you can see that relative to January 2014, manufacturing represented a larger share of the overall economy. It fell harder in the Great Recession, trended similarly to the state through the first half of the 2010s, and then recently has exploded both with the opening of the Gigafactory and recently has been on a pretty rapid pace of growth as well. The next four charts all kind of look like this, and it's kind of busy, so I just want to sort of highlight a few things. First, the color of these boxes represent the average weekly wage in each industry. This is the slightly more detailed list of industries that are within the manufacturing sector. And in this chart, you can see, for example, with all other miscellaneous manufacturing in the third quarter of 2004, the average weekly wage was a little over $1,000 a week. Second, you'll see these big, large shadowed numbers here. These represent broader sectors within the manufacturing industry. 31 up here in the top right corner is food and apparel related manufacturing. 32 is plastic, cement, wood, and other non-metallic manufacturing. And then 33 has to do with electronics and metal related manufacturing, as well as some furniture products. And it's really dramatic to see from 2004, which is in that sort of early pre-Great Recession structure, how much of manufacturing was concrete manufacturing, trusses, gypsum products, wood cabinets and countertops, other concrete products, a lot of sort of construction related activities, sheet metal work, fabricated structural metal manufacturing, and so on. If we flip ahead to our most current data, which is the third quarter of 2021, first, it's really apparent just how much the Gigafactory has affected the manufacturing picture in the state, with storage battery manufacturing suddenly popping up to being 20 to 25% of the total manufacturing employment we have in the state. You can also see that there has been a bit of a contraction, relatively speaking, in the sort of construction related products. So you can see there are a number of industries. As we get into the brighter colors, these are relatively higher average weekly wages. And so other miscellaneous manufacturing is up to about $1,700 per week in the third quarter. Storage battery manufacturing, $1,900 per week. Miscellaneous electronic equipment over $2,000 per week. And so this is definitely an industry where there can be some much higher wages. I think by contrast, when I did this same chart for the logistics and operations sector, the general warehousing industry was somewhere in the neighborhood of $900 a week. So there is definitely a large spread in those types of wages. The next two charts are the same time period, but instead of size being total employment, the sizes of these boxes represent the total wages paid in these industries. And again, you can see this roughly the same distribution. But as we go into 2021, just the sheer size in this chart of those industries that are in this kind of green sector, they're not the very highest average weekly wages, but by total size of employment, as well as relatively high wages, These boxes take up a pretty substantial portion of the chart with just the miscellaneous manufacturing and storage battery manufacturing industries. Between the two of those being close to $400 million in wages paid during the third quarter of 2021. This chart shows the evolution of Nevada's unemployment rate over time, so switching from employment to unemployment. One of the things I like to highlight is how recessions typically flow in and out. They take a year or two to come on, they take a year or two to go off. And this is usually because the economy is sort of rebalancing after it goes through a shock like the Great Recession. In contrast, the COVID pandemic, the rate shoots up to nearly 30%, which is comparable to the Great Depression, and then plummets very nearly as quickly to where we're already back to an unemployment rate of 5.1%, which if you draw a line across, it's not the very lowest that we've ever gotten, but it's pretty close to that line. We're not in a high unemployment, lots of people looking for work type of place. We have very rapidly shifted from incredibly low unemployment to incredibly high unemployment, back to incredibly low unemployment in a period of time that's comparable to the 2001 recession, which was this tiny little blip right here. So I think that dramatic of a change in the economy definitely impacts who's looking for work, why they're looking for work, what sort of work they're considering, what they think their future prospects are. So we've seen a lot of turnover in a very short amount of time for the economy. 5.1% unemployment is still one of the higher rates in the country. There are some very low unemployment rates, getting down to nearly 2% if you're looking at Utah or Nebraska. But for comparison, the unemployment rate currently in the Reno-Sparks area is 2.9%. The average unemployment in the state outside of Las Vegas is 2.9%. And so we still have more disruption in the casino, hotel, and leisure and hospitality industry in Las Vegas. The unemployment rate is not particularly high, but it's very low everywhere else, including the Reno-Sparks area, which is where most of the people who work in manufacturing in the state are located. Similarly, our unemployment claims levels are also very low. Looking at the average for February of each year, this is the lowest number of weekly claimants in the unemployment program that we've seen going back to 1990. We're similar to where we were in 2006 and 1999, but we've essentially resumed a trend of falling levels of claims, interrupted briefly by the pandemic, but getting back to a very low number of people on average in the unemployment program and looking for work. Sort of a complement to the unemployment rate is the labor force participation rate. This chart shows the evolution of the participation rate over time in Nevada, with the gray area being sort of the normal range of other states. You can see back in the early 80s and 90s, Nevada's participation rate was much higher than the nation. In the 90s and through 2010s, we're kind of in the middle range of other states getting to kind of a normal sort of place. But coming out of the pandemic and the recession caused by it, our participation rate is actually toward the lower end. It's not the lowest in the nation, but it's down here around the 20th percentile of the range that all states are experiencing. So we still have an above average share of people not necessarily participating. Now, this could be for reasons like retirement. If we've had more people moving to Nevada, not to work, but to enjoy the lovely climate that we have, that could push our participation rate down if you have people who are unlikely to be working entering the area and becoming part of the population. But this could also represent people who have had challenges getting back to work due to potential healthcare concerns or access to childcare or things like that. Those things could also keep people from participating in the labor market. And participation here means either you're working or you are unemployed, which means you were looking for work within the last 4 weeks. And finally, a couple of national points of reference. Sadly, we don't have this data available from Nevada, but the Bureau of Labor Statistics produces its job openings and labor turnover survey, which has information like the quits rate and the job openings rate, which get a lot of attention when they come out each month. Here I'm looking at a couple of those different measures and comparing them for the goods producing industries in the state. You can see the three different breakouts of manufacturing that we have here, which are durable goods manufacturing, the total, and then non-durable goods manufacturing. As arrows go more to the right, that's our hire rate. So it's the pace of hires into a particular industry in a particular month. And on the vertical axis, you have the quit rate, how many people are separating. I think it's important to note this red line here represents the line where you would have 2 hires for every 1 quit. The black line up here in the corner would be if you had a balanced ratio of people entering and people leaving. And so in most of these industries, we do actually see increases in both quits as well as hires, but all of the phases of the manufacturing industry are in this pace of having a larger number of hires on average than the number of quits. If we shift this and instead look at the hire rate and the rate of job openings, you can see the arrows get a little bit more vertical. And here we've moved up above that black 1-to-1 line, and the red line up top here is 2 job openings for every 1 hire. And so you can see for the construction industry, its hire rate hasn't necessarily changed much, but it's seen a pretty big increase in the last year in its job openings rate. And also, particularly for durable goods manufacturing and the impact that it has on the total sector, you can see these lines are moving more vertical. So we are seeing a more rapid increase in the number of job openings of employers looking for work nationally than we are seeing increases in the pace of hires, though we are seeing increases in both the number of openings and the number of people being hired are rising in the state. And with that, I have a few an email address if you have any questions for us, and some links to the various resources within DETR's system to try to provide services to employers and claimants. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, David. We will jump right over to agenda item number 7 and recognize Chelsea Wahlberg, Research Manager with the Governor's Office of Economic Development. And then following Chelsea's presentation, we will address questions and then circle around for your feedback. So again, please take note of items that resonate with or differ from your experience. All right, thanks, Chelsea.
All right. So thank you, Amy. I'm going to give a brief overview of employment trends and structural changes in Nevada's economy, not to duplicate too much what Mr. David Schmidt already discussed with you all. Then we'll take a look into the manufacturing industry employment and trends and some demographics related to that industry, how the manufacturing sector compares to other Nevada industries. And then I'm going to dive into some information about the manufacturing career cluster, which is actually different than the industry. So this is a grouping of occupations that are grouped together because they have similar skills. So those occupations go across a variety of industries. They're not specific to manufacturing necessarily. So you will notice that the employment related to that career cluster is a lot larger than industry employment itself. So looking at the effect of COVID on Nevada jobs, as Dave has already mentioned, we're almost back to where we were prior to the pandemic. Most of the employment that we have left to gain back is related to accommodation and food services. So looking at how Nevada's economy has diversified over the last 11 years or so, and also since COVID, you can see from 2010 to 2019, there was some diversification. Looking at manufacturing specifically, it went from 3.2% of the total economic mix to 4%, whereas tourism, gaming, and entertainment shrunk from 31.2% to 28.2%. Those trends that we saw happening between 2010 and 2019 were just pushed further along with COVID. So manufacturing grew faster than it did from 2010 to 2019, and accommodation and food services, or tourism, gaming, and entertainment just shrunk a whole bunch. So that's what you can see between these charts. It's true for pretty much every industry, with the exception of mining and aerospace and defense, held pretty steady. So manufacturing industry employment, there are 60,000 or so jobs as of 2021. That's 46% below the national average. Between 2011 and 2021, that employment increased 51.7%, which is really substantial. That compares to national 3.7% growth over that 10-year period. So we may be below the national average, but we are growing really quickly, which shouldn't come as a shock to anyone. So our median earnings is $86,496 per year. The nation is $91,447. So we are below the national average, and that is a point where maybe we could see some growth to draw in some better employment statistics there. Looking at our manufacturing employment by zip code, it can be a little bit hard to see what's going on in this, so I apologize for that. But if you looked closer at Washoe County and Clark County, I think it'd be no surprise that the employment concentrations are much larger in those areas, and you would see a lot more of those bright yellow spots. So there are 2,039 manufacturing businesses in Nevada. 55% of those are in Southern Nevada, and 40% of those are in Northern Nevada, which is a lot more even of a split than you typically see with industries between the North and the South. So looking at regional manufacturing industry employment, there are 26,100 jobs in Las Vegas, 25,821 in Reno. So there's only about 1,000, less than 1,000 difference between those two areas. We are anticipating growth in both. Looking at demographics, 70% of the manufacturing industry is male. The majority or the highest group at 24.2% is 25 to 34, followed pretty closely behind is 35 to 44 age group at 22.2%, and then 21.5% is between 45 and 54. There's still nearly a 17%, or a 17% on the dot is between 55 and 64. And then 19 to 24, 65 plus are both under 10%. 53.7% of the manufacturing industry is comprised of white people, followed by 28.9% Hispanic or Latino. No other demographic is really substantial. Everything else is under 10%. So this graph is going to show you location quotients over time and current location quotient. So what a location quotient is it shows you the concentration of Nevada employment as compared to the United States. So if you had a location quotient of 1, you would have the same concentration of that industry as the US does on average. So we have 4 different categories when we look at location quotients in this manner. We have mature industries, transforming industries, emerging industries, and stars. So if you are star, you have really high location quotient and you are still seeing significant growth over time. If you're an emerging industry, you have a low, below 1 location quotient, but we're seeing growth. So you're emerging, you might hit that star category. And the mature industry that we have here, tourism, gaming, and entertainment, is a large location quotient, but we're seeing decreases in that location quotient over time. So manufacturing falls in that emerging industry category. It has a location quotient of 0.54, which makes sense because we are below the national average. But from 2001 to 2021, there's been a 35% increase in that location quotient. So I wouldn't be surprised if someday we see manufacturing move into that star category. So this slide can be a little bit confusing for people, but I'll break it down as simply as I can. What this is showing is how much growth comes from national growth and how much growth comes from the things in Nevada's economy that are unique to Nevada. So this is often related to the rising tide lifts all boats phenomenon. So if all employment in manufacturing is rising in the nation, then manufacturing employment is likely to rise in Nevada as well, right? So from 2011 to 2021, there was a job change of 20,466 jobs. 1,475 of those jobs was due to that rising tide. And the remaining 18,990 jobs were actually related to Nevada's unique factors. That's a pretty stark contrast when you really think about it. So Nevada is working really hard to bring in those manufacturing jobs, and it's showing. Looking at the manufacturing career cluster. So now we've transitioned from industry employment over to occupational employment. So there are 121,858 jobs in the manufacturing career cluster. That's 14% below the national average. There's been a 9.4%, or we're anticipating a 9.4% increase from 2021 to 2026. Mind you, those estimates are based on past trends projected forward, so take that with a grain of salt. But that compares to 2.3% in the nation as a whole. So if we break down the industries that are most common where this employment lies, warehousing and storage is 11% of that employment, followed by employment services. So that would be like, you call an employment service to have temporary employees, 6.9%. Followed by other electrical equipment and component manufacturing, which was 5.6%. And those are broad categories. So you can see the 6-digit NAICS code detail below follows pretty closely: general warehousing, storage, temporary help services, storage, battery manufacturing. Casino hotels is almost always a big one for any occupational group. I don't think that's surprising. And then couriers and express delivery services. So looking at our largest manufacturing occupations, by far the largest is laborers and freight stock and material movers. What I want to point out on this slide, because you can look through and see where these top 10 largest manufacturing occupations lie, are the high demand occupational rankings. Those come from my office, the Governor's Office of Economic Development. And I'll go over in a second how we come up with these rankings. But if you're top 100 or above, we consider you in demand. So laborers, freight stock, material movers are, well, high demand rather, are at 246, kind of middle of the road. There's a few of these that fall above 50, which means they're really great jobs that have great futures. First line supervisors of mechanics, buyers and purchasing agents, so 68, first line supervisors of production and operating workers, and industrial machinery mechanics are all have really bright outlooks. So how we come to that in-demand occupation analysis, by identifying high demand occupations, we have several factors that we put together and we weight those factors, and how each occupation ranks in those weights is how we derive that list. So we start by looking at the target sectors for GOED, and we focus on those industries so that we are really pushing those forward, because those are the industries we'd like to see growth in. And then we look at real-time job postings, employment projections, STEM scores, job openings, wages. This year I included an automation and COVID risk. COVID risk I will probably take out in this next iteration, but I think it was important for this one. But basically with this list, I would love if each of you at some point could look at, especially the manufacturing occupations, and see where they're ranked and tell me if you think anecdotally if it makes sense to you, because we don't have a qualitative component to that list currently. And I think that feedback is really important. So looking at the top occupations as ranked by that high demand ranking, industrial machinery mechanics is the highest ranking manufacturing occupation at 21. But all 10 of these are within the top 100. So that is good. We are pushing Nevadans into some of those manufacturing occupations, certainly. So I wanted to point this out before I go into the educational mapping for manufacturing career cluster. Only 8.5% of manufacturing jobs require education at the entry level. So you'll see the number of completions are pretty low considering the annual openings, and that's why. Because 32.7% have no formal credential and 58.8% require high school diploma or equivalent, and that's a really big chunk. So there are 80 programs related to the manufacturing career cluster in the state. We just got 2021 data out, so that's exciting. There were 2,306 completions as of 2001, or not as of, in 2001. And their annual openings for 2021 were 102,000. So I really wanted to point out that stark difference. That doesn't mean that we need 90,000 or so more people graduating in these degrees. But it's just something to consider. So our top completions came from welding technology, electricians, heating, air conditioning, HVAC, vehicle maintenance and repair, and airframe mechanics, all below 300 completions for 2021. Looking at educational mapping in terms of distance and non-distance offered programs, the vast majority are non-distance offered programs. I think that makes sense in this case. They're very hands-on programs. I think it'd be pretty hard to learn how to weld via distance learning. Mind you, I haven't tried, so I can't say for sure, but that's my assumption. I like to look at this statistic though, because distance offered programs are important for the future, especially for rural areas where you may not have access to education, or for those who are uncomfortable because of COVID and future pandemic risks and things like that. It just provides more opportunity. So TMCC was the top institution with 467 completions. And they grew 32.3% over the prior year. But you can see the other institutions there that are high up in the manufacturing career cluster educations. And then finally, my last slide for you all is job postings for the manufacturing career cluster. On average per month, there were 19,800 or so postings, and that compares to 44,244 average monthly hires for each year or each month in 2021. Sales reps for wholesale and manufacturing were the #1 occupation to have monthly postings, around 1,000 per month. Followed by customer service representatives, which certainly does not just stick to the manufacturing career cluster. That would be in a lot of careers for career clusters. That laborers and freight stock material movers, big occupation in the career cluster had 839. And then heavy tractor truck drivers and first line supervisors of retail sales workers. Again, I don't think retail sales workers, the majority of those come from the manufacturing career cluster, but they are part of it nonetheless. And that's it for my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have or provide you with future information if you need.
Thank you so much, both David and Chelsea. Really appreciate that context. As we hear first from employers what the demand is, and then we hear maybe a little bit of why this is the experience, right? That's really primarily why this is so crucial to get your feedback. So I will open it up again to employers or others who work with employers present. And in particular, we'd love to hear the items that resonate, anything that differed from your experience. You can raise your hand, you can raise your hand visibly or using Zoom, or you can go ahead and unmute yourself. And please feel free to ask your questions of either Chelsea or Dave or both at this time as well. I will also help by calling on folks. I'd love to get reactions, particularly from Gerd and Paul. I know that you're both, or actually I saw Tom unmute, so maybe we'll let you go first, just with your reactions.
Yeah, I was going to raise my hand, but
all right, go for it.
That data is really, really comprehensive, and great job, team, on that. I think maybe kind of digesting a little bit is, for me, it's like, whoa, right? And then I think our manufacturers are probably trying to think how they fit in there, right? Like, where do they fit in for their business? Because I think what we saw is, yes, we've got that big contingent at the Gigafactory representing a large portion of our manufacturing jobs, but we're a pretty diverse manufacturing economy here, right? And so, the generalizations are hard sometimes to capture, but, there's a few things that really stuck out to me, the entry level stuff, the laborer side, right? And those are things that as we move forward, automation can help as we provide incentive for manufacturers and help for manufacturers to take some of those labor jobs, automate them, and then, attract more of that STEM talent that's coming out of our schools right now for to actually program and automate and set these things up, right? So I think there's some clear pathways in that data for us to go down as far as skill sets and kind of what we want to target on. I mean, we're doing great on the welding. We're doing pretty good on the machining as well. Like I think our 2 years are doing a really good job at those programs, maybe awareness and again, some pathways to underserved communities and making sure that there's access to those programs, I think is something that we can work on and get him into those qualified programs. We've got a lot of work to do on women in manufacturing. 70% male, like there's a huge untapped thing there. I mean, I heard kind of an anecdotal statistic that the robotics programs that have been stood up in every school in our state now, 60% are Latina. And, that is manufacturing. I mean, Rosie the Riveter, right? I mean, so the manufacturing floors historically have been supported by women in manufacturing. What are we doing to highlight those needs, to highlight those opportunities to women in our state, right? So, so great data. My head's just like spinning, right? Like trying to figure out, some things there, but maybe some time to digest a little bit. But there's some really, really great pathways in that data. So great job, team.
Absolutely. I appreciate that perspective so much. And this is why we're really grateful to have these quarterly meetings happen systematically so that over time you'll not only will you get used to seeing the numbers presented and really kind of understanding how it relates to what your experience is, but then we'll be getting the feedback from you so we can start to target what's really valuable. I know, one takeaway would be to provide that wage data between different regions of the state, so we can just better understand that. So things like that. So any other feedback at this time? Oh, go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I don't know how to find the little button to raise my hand, so
Okay.
I'll just do it my way. Piggyback again off of what Tom was saying. I'm kind of interested in seeing the data, employment data and wage data on those like programmers, software programmers, computer programmers, because these days when you say general and advanced manufacturing, you can almost throw out general because it's becoming advanced, right? So how are we going to tie those tech jobs and tech titles and positions into that manufacturing data to where we can kind of push those numbers forward and figure out what's needed from a manufacturing standpoint?
Go ahead, David. I see you there.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I love occupational wage data, and we do have some things that we can bring to try to address that. One of the challenges, and maybe something to think about, is when we get to occupational data, the source that we have for that comes from a survey program. And because of the way that survey is structured, it's kind of an estimate of, like, we will say May 2021 numbers. I think were just released by the BLS, but that May 2021 number is collected over the prior 3 rolling years with some cost of living type adjustments. And so particularly in an environment like we have right now, where there's some rapid changes taking place across the economy, like we can give that snapshot, but it comes with some big caveats. And so if there's other ways of collecting, sharing, or working with more current data from like job postings is another one, but it's not super comprehensive. And so like everything has its drawbacks, but it is particularly useful data, I think, for the workforce system, just because ultimately when you're talking about people, you're talking about what they do, not just the whole industry. And so it's really critical data. It's also hard. And so I share your desire for it, and hope to be able to get something for you.
Bill, I just wanted to say, I think that your comments on advanced manufacturing are really pertinent for the future. And I know that ONET is making significant changes to the structure of their career clusters, and I'm not sure if that's part of it, but I do have an information technology report as well, and I would be happy to pass that along to you if you'd like.
Can you just quickly speak to what ONET is, just since you referenced it? There might be folks here that don't know what that is.
So ONET codes and SOC codes are both related to the same structure. It's a hierarchy of occupational coding. ONET and SOC have the same up to, sometimes it's referenced as 5, sometimes it's referenced to as 6 digit, but it's the same. ONET dives down a little bit further. There is less information available on those deeper codes, but they have a really great website that details job outlooks and descriptions of each of those occupations. And they do cool things like create career clusters. It's a great program. So hopefully that helps. Sure.
And the presentation from the Technology Council meeting, which was held on March 28th, is also available on the GOIN website. If that's what you're referencing, Chelsea, then it might be easy for folks to grab that there. Go ahead, Isla.
I was just curious, this is a part of Chelsea's presentation. When you listed the training providers, and it was all the CCs, and then there was one that didn't show the price point for training. Is that an individual private trainer, or is that a group of train? I was just curious about who that is, because they're producing a lot. There's number 2 on the list.
I'm pulling my presentation back up. I
Sorry.
closed it for some
Right.
reason. Okay, so Advanced Training Institute, I am not familiar with that school. I'm assuming that's the case, that they just didn't want to share that information. iPads is not the most incredible data source of all time, unfortunately. It's required for public schools to report, not private schools. Private schools do sometimes provide the information, which is great, but even the data that comes from the public schools is imperfect. I've had many educational partners express that what they know of a certain program is not what's showing up in iPads, and so it's just the best data I have available to me, unfortunately, but I'd love feedback on what you're seeing there too. Sorry, Isla, that goes way past your question, but I just wanted to throw that out there for the group.
It's something we're talking about, Chelsea, for sure.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to move on to agenda item number 9, which is a partner presentation portion of the meeting. So this quarter, we're featuring the NEPRIS platform, which connects industry professionals with the state's middle and high school classrooms. Each quarter, presenters will be selected based on some of the key themes pulled from your employer feedback during the previous meetings. So that's why it's so important to get your engagement during the meeting, because we really do lean on that so we can structure the agenda in the future. So I'm going to pull this up. I recognize that we're getting close to 4:30 here, so we'll go through this fairly quickly. Available. Did my Zoom just quit? No, I'm still here. I just got a pop unexpectedly, so I'm going to ignore it, move it to a different screen. Okay. I think you're all still there, and you can still hear me. All right, so here we go. So it feels very easy to say that the connection between industry, and education is essential. And while educators, particularly these past few years, are supporting our state's children on many levels, the foundations and skills that are established in K-12 education are fundamental to career trajectories for Nevada's young adults. This was mentioned or referenced previously in the meeting. So before we jump into what the NEPRIS platform is, I think it's important to highlight a few of the top reasons, both from the employer and from the educator perspectives, that provide that are why investments are being made in this resource in our state. So first, Nevada's employment landscape is shifting intentionally as new employees relocate to regions across the state and existing companies evolve to remain competitive. We see a demand for new and emerging skill sets. Second, communities are isolated by geography. One of the many reasons that many of us are drawn to the state is because we have these incredible remote landscapes. But with that, many of our communities in rural counties, but also our metros, are geographically isolated, which makes it difficult to expand the scope of opportunity. Students need to be exposed to opportunities that may not yet exist in their community or in our state, but absolutely will in the very near future, and they cannot be what they cannot see. Nevada's economy is booming and transitioning at a pace that we haven't experienced before, which you saw in that data. And finally, related to all of these items is the transition to the future of work. In order for existing and emerging industries to remain competitive, we must ensure that Nevada's emerging workforce understands local opportunities and can think beyond what may be immediately available. On the right side here are some of the reasons that educators are eager for a program or system to connect industry with their classroom. So we understand that there are increasing difficulties with arranging off-site engagement In many regions in our state, there are just not enough buses available to even get students to school regularly, let alone to field trips. And due to safety or security on site, some employers just are not able to accommodate visits for minors. We know that this is particularly challenging for some manufacturers. It can be very challenging for educators who are already stretched very thin to even find a company or reach the right contact within that company for the most relevant quality experience. And then finally, we are still dealing with COVID and the future is unpredictable. So we're seeing that in-person engagements often need to be canceled or adjusted at the last minute, and that both sides are really craving quality virtual alternatives. So for all of these reasons, the state of Nevada has been investing heavily in the adoption of the NEPRIS platform. The Nevada Department of Education and the Governor's Office of Workforce Innovation have partnered to provide full access to every public, middle, and high school teacher across the state. The NEPRIS platform connects industry professionals with classroom students virtually, removing barriers like geography, time, cost, and coordination. It allows professionals the flexibility to be proactive or reactive with their engagement and aligns their passion and interests to short micro engagements on topics year round. So with this investment, Nevada's created a partner page called NEPRIS for Nevada. This captures all of our state's engagement under one umbrella. NEPRIS for Nevada currently has nearly 8,000 educators in the system, with every school district represented. There are also more than 90 industry professionals ranging from Tesla, NVIE, Boxable, Nevada Arts Council, and Weinberg Machining is in there too, and many, many others. It's actually great to see so many of you on the call that are already in the system. So there are three primary features of the NEPRIS site. One is industry driven and one is educator driven. These sessions are all, or they can be, there's the option to record them, and then they're all published in the third feature, which is the video library. So what you see here are a few of the many, many, many ways that the system can be used to strengthen these connections. So I'm going to play this very, very short video. It's 1 minute, but it really is the best way to begin to understand the tool.
Since 2013, NEPRIS has been bridging the gap between industry and education, bringing real-world relevance and career exposure to all students, while enabling companies and professionals to share their skills and knowledge with the future workforce. Through virtual career days, field trips, mock interviews, capstone project presentations, and more, we break social and geographic barriers to provide exposure to career pathways that students never knew existed.
So what is it that I do currently? So I am the owner and creator of a brand called Kickstart, which I started in 2014. Initially, I started creating YouTube videos. So here's an example of some of the thumbnails of my content.
You have a love for jump roping. If you've ever been a cheerleader, you could get a scholarship for that. Academic, career specific, and then sports.
In every lab, you will see that we have freezers that are super cold. This is minus 80 degrees, so that the tissues or samples that we have can be preserved for a long, long, long time.
Why you? There's about 4 other people I'm going to sit down with. Why should I choose you over everybody else?
I'm very hardworking and I don't give up until I succeed.
Suggestion would be, I would just focus again, going back to what is really your why? What are you trying to solve? Why is that important?
We're going to say print, data, head, 10. And so this is our syntax. This is how we're.
Can you not see the screen?
No.
No, it hasn't changed since the first slide.
Oh no! Oh darn! Sorry. Thank you for texting me. Okay.
Amy, it sounded great though.
Oh, you can hear it?
Yeah.
It's way cooler when you can see it. All right. If it quits, I will log back in. There are many others that are hosts, so that shouldn't kick you all off, but I have some errors on my screen here. Okay, that didn't quit. All right, let me try to share again. Oh my goodness. Thank you. I won't make you listen to the whole bit. Can you see this screen now with a video here?
It's starting to share. It doesn't show yet. Now it does. Yeah.
Okay. Serious about quitting that time. Okay, sorry about that. See it now?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, thank you. Oh, well, the other slides didn't show that much. It just, I already spoke to them. So I'm just going to show you some of the, so you can see what they're showing you. There we go.
And then sports.
In every lab, you will see that we have freezers
No,
that are super cold. This is minus 80 degrees, so that the tissues or samples that we have can be preserved for a long, long, long time.
Why you? There's about 4 other people I'm going to sit down with. Why should I choose you over everybody else?
I'm very hardworking and I don't give up until I succeed.
Suggestion would be, I would just focus again, going back to what is really your why? What are you trying to solve? And why is that important?
We're going to say print, data, head, 10. And so this is our syntax. This is how we're speaking Python, speaking with our computer.
Happy connecting.
there we go. All right. Advance. There we go. All right. So here's what you do. You go to nevada.nepris.com and create an account. It's always free for industry professionals. And then you have open access to present to those 8,000 plus educators in Nevada. It's a national platform, so you will actually have the opportunity to present to tens of thousands of educators across the country. Let's see, in the room, Tesla has presented several times. The first presentation they made was reached 18 states and something like 750 students, just the first session, pretty remarkable. So they're live sessions, able to take live questions from students. Nevada Industry Excellence, Tom, I think he had to jump off at 4:30, but he just completed his 4th session in the system. So reaching hundreds of students that way, speaking to the awesome manufacturing jobs in the state and what it takes to get there. So it's open to everyone. Nevada teachers are eager to hear from you. Definitely encourage you to reach out. That educator-driven side of the platform, we do have educators that are posting volunteer requests in the state. There's one open right now for GIS professional technology. So mapping geospatial technology. So if you know anybody, I will share how to share that out. That's a Southern Nevada classroom looking for that. All right, so we're also structuring a series of industry chats around these national days or weeks or months. We just are at the end of Nevada Robotics Week, but it's actually, we have 2 more sessions scheduled throughout the rest of the month. One will feature whale research drones, and another will feature VEX robotics classroom technology. But you can keep an eye out and be sure that I will be sharing with you opportunities to engage in series in the fall. So I can take questions now, and then again, I'd love to get your immediate feedback. I know it's 4:30 and it's really hard to engage, but if there's anything that stands out to you in particular, what your immediate actions are, how you see being able to use the tool to promote your company, your work, or your workforce, and then what challenges you might anticipate for implementation. And this is something that our partners should also be in there presenting on their work, the work that they do. I know it's a lot, it's late. I don't know, Paul, I'll put you on the spot there. If you are able to give feedback, it was Paul's colleague, Michael de Blasi, that made the presentation, but if you had feedback just from within Tesla of the reaction there and kind of the engagement within the company.
Sorry, I was muted there. No, I mean, we thought the experience, Michael thought the experience went well. We didn't realize the size of the audience, I think, at first, and that was kind of a little overwhelming after thinking about it. And we definitely plan to do more of these in the future, be probably a little more better prepared than we were last time. We thought it was actually going to go out to mostly Nevada students, but realized it was a national audience. So maybe changing some of the topics that we talked about, but overall, great experience. Really enjoyed it. Want to continue to keep doing those.
Absolutely. Any other thoughts or feedback? And you can always reach out. I'm more than happy to talk to your teams, talk to your networks about how to engage with education through the platform or other ways. All right. Then I will move on to agenda item number 10, which is the opportunity for partners to introduce themselves and share some key resources or calls to action, given what's been shared by employers throughout this conversation. Oh, I do see your chats now letting me know my slides weren't moving. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to put some information in the chat. Okay, so please introduce yourself with your name, your organization that you're representing and your role, and then it would be helpful to note some of the populations that you serve or your primary stakeholders and the program or opportunity most relevant to the issues raised today. All right, go ahead, Angela.
My hand down. Hello, everybody. My name is Angela Holt. I'm the director of the Excel College and Career Readiness Program at Western Nevada College here in Carson City. We are a federally funded adult education program. We're a WIOA Title II partner. We do provide all adult education and basic literacy services to our community and all of our stakeholders. We have English language learning classes. We have high school equivalency preparation. We are a testing center. And beyond that, we have funding to support our students who are seeking certifications and degrees. So we can help to pay tuition, and we provide support and supplementary instruction for them to find success in those courses and build the professional skills that they need to go on to be good employees at in every sector. So we help students in manufacturing and machining, nursing, allied health, and all of those areas. So we are a resource that's here. We provide classes to our students both in person and virtually. We have a great team of people who are ready and waiting. So I'd love to hear from you and know how we can help to support your needs.
That's great. Thank you so much, Angela. I think that's a great and a very important item to add here, which I'll add to future meeting notes. But if you do have populations that are looking for work, that might be a good fit. Please do raise that and we'll help to make those direct connections. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
I saw Bill's hand raised. Go ahead, Bill.
Hi, Bill Regenhart, Las Vegas Global Economic Alliance. And yes, if you have anyone that needs to take advantage of adult ed and those Title II programs, please do so, because as a former executive director for adult ed, I know the importance of it and how successful they can be once they go through the program. So take advantage of that. Just wanted to give everybody a heads up. The Regional Industry Sector Partnership for General and Advanced Manufacturing is going to have its inaugural meeting April 21st here at the CSN Henderson campus. It's from 11 to 2:30, and we invite everybody to please swing by. The manufacturers will be the ones basically running that meeting. So it's set up in a little bit different format than we have here. And we would love to have as much participation in that as possible. So if you can make it April 21st, 11 o'clock in the morning. We do serve lunch, so you won't go hungry. And looking forward to having that. And thanks, Amy, for everything that you're doing.
Thanks so much. Bill, please put that those details in the chat if you could. And if there's a link to register, that would be great. Thank you. And Earl, I saw your hand up too.
Oh, good afternoon, everybody. It's Earl McDowell with the Hope for Prisoners, Senior Workforce Development Specialist. I was really interested in the presentation today because one of the things that, that chance opportunity, and I was kind of really interested in the way you say entry-level positions. Those are definitely fit fine for those individuals. Plus, we have dollars that can help pay for some of that. So if you're an employer, you're looking to hire someone with a second chance, we're ideal for that. And then we have funds that can go ahead and help that person be trained. We have an upcoming job fair, matter of fact, it's going to be April the 20th from 10 to 2 p.m. at our location here because we moved our location. So we have a big job fair here. So if you're an employer and you want to come out and meet some individuals who are formerly incarcerated or people who are unemployed or underemployed, please come out and join us. It should be very good. And you'll get to see some really good individuals. Plus, you get to see our new facility, which is a state of the art. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Earl. And please do put that information or a link in the chat. Much appreciated. I can see some employer eyebrows raising there. Any other partners interested in introducing themselves? Go ahead, Kelly.
All right, I'm just introduce myself again. My name is Kelly George with Opportunity Alliance Nevada. And oftentimes the reason people can't get to work might be because of childcare, might be because of transportation, it might be because they've been evicted recently. And those are topics they tend to not come to work and talk about. And we can be a resource for your employees to help connect them with actual money for transportation dollars, for diapers, for food, for gas, for rental assistance. So whatever those needs might be. And again, we know that if we can go through our saving and spending plan and actually show them that leaving their current position with you to go get a $1 an hour raise doesn't make sense when they're driving now from North Las Vegas down to Henderson. So we can work with your employees around not only the financial education part, but also around immediate resources that they might need that you might not be aware of.
Wonderful. Thank you. I know there are some folks from the Dieter Business Services team on. I'm not sure if you wanted to share the resource that you provide. Or go ahead, Elisa.
Hi, it's Elisa. I didn't know if any of the folks were on specifically, but Dieter does have business services available to employers. And we will share information with you about that. But essentially, we can go through our list of job seekers, pull out folks who meet your qualifications, provide interviewing locations for you, provide job fairs for you. So we can help you find the folks you're looking for. And we can also support the training that they need. If there are certificates or credentials they need, we do have programs that support that, support the OSHA safety cards, whatever they might need to get back to work.
Wonderful. Thank you. I put you on the spot again, Hunter. I'm not sure if there are resources that the IBEW wants to share, or just to, I know you spoke to the employer side earlier, but speaking to the either the union members or apprentice side, I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, there's I'll see if I can dig something out. We've got an open call now for apprentices for line work. Which is, it's a little, again, I mentioned the math, and there's also a Class A required. So those are a couple of barriers that we sometimes run into. But if you can manage to get through the apprenticeship, it's a great career. I mean, It's a very lucrative area of work. Yeah, I'll see if I can put that into the chat.
Super helpful. Thank you. All right, last call for partners. All right, well, next agenda item number 11, I'm just very quickly going to get some future meetings on your radar. I will send this out following the meeting, but we're looking at 2 remaining meetings for 2022, aiming for July 18th and September 26th. So you can note those dates, but I will send them out. So stay tuned for details on the timing. Before we move on, I need to check for voting members that arrived after roll call that may still be here. So you can please identify yourselves, but I don't see those 3. No. Okay. So finally, agenda item number 12, before we adjourn, is public comment. This is the space for members of the public to provide comment. Yes. As a reminder, no formal action may be taken on any issues not included in the posted agenda. Public comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Please raise your hand or unmute yourself to be recognized for public comment. Okay. Hearing no comments, I hereby move to adjourn this meeting.